If you, right, you retreat, yep, that's the problem. Hi, I'm Grant Climate from Darsana Martial Arts. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd like to support us or join our online academy, there are links in the description. All right, let's get to the lesson. Another common misunderstanding amongst Tai Chi practitioners and students surrounds the concept of yielding. The idea of yielding may come from the soft nature of Tai Chi practice in the sense that we never want to put force against force, or this notion of leading an opponent or push hands partner's force into emptiness. And this often leads students into believing that they have to move away from force, move around a physical obstruction, or in some way evade their partner's attack. And this often leads students into running away from force, shifting around on their feet, rotating in big ways, or in some other way, trying to avoid a push hand partner's or opponent's movement and force. Now, in the early stages of training, this is often how it is taught. The student learns to receive an incoming force or some extension, such as in single hand push hands rotation from a partner, and then they move backward away from this and turn so that that force does not directly contact their body. And early on, that's fine. This is the stage where we learn to do that. But then the students will sometimes remain in that understanding, and it ends up being a mistaken understanding of what yielding is really about, which is the absorbing and sinking down through the body of their partner or opponent's force, so that the emptiness that that force is being led into is an internal emptiness rather than an external emptiness. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't sometimes lead an opponent into an externally empty space that we don't inhabit, but most of the time, at least to some degree, this is that we are leading their force through the emptiness in our body, which we create through opening, releasing, and sinking. In this video, I'm going to explain this to one of my students and show the stages and steps of learning to yield internally, as well as how this then leads to returning force to a push hands partner or perhaps to an opponent. I'll play the heel for a bit. So you start moving and I start to yield. And now you start to look for where my density is, right? So my density is there and I'm just trying to yield it away. Go ahead. And then I'll go ahead and redirect, but you can feel this isn't connected to anything, right? Mm-hmm. It's pushing against you, right? Go ahead. And I'm gonna yield that away, but if you can capture that, exactly. What I want to do is we want an exchange of force. There has to be some pressure to go in, so you're never running away. We first just want to learn to maintain the proper conditions in our own body while following the other person. So in the single hand rotation, first we're just learning to sink from one leg to the other. And that's just really mostly our own movement, our own weight, and we're using that to generate our motion. And we're using that to retreat at first while maintaining contact at least. So this is just how we know we can maintain our proper body conditions while moving congruently with another person. So at the first stage, you're not worried about absorbing their force. You're just worried about maintaining your alignment, releasing and sinking. You could do this solo without another person. The only difference would be that you're the one dictating your movement. Then, once we've got a hang of that, and that might take somebody some time to get mastered, I give a little tiny bit of resistance, meaning I seek to feel your force engage my alignment, go through my structure, my body, and into the earth. That also then gives you a feedback. Is your force coming up through good alignment? So there's just a little more pressure between us. And as you push, I'm letting your increased pressure move through to the rear leg and cause me to sink and turn. It's your pressure that does that now. Then I release that pressure up towards my hand as I sink my weight down into the front leg in this case. But it isn't a movement forward and backward. It's a movement downward into the rear leg in terms of your force. And then a movement downward into the lead leg as it comes up from the rear leg. Yeah, right there. This is where you can start checking yourself, especially on the back end. Let everything sink. Now, instead of taking me off what you feel like you can do, I also want to feel that you know you can come back. Yeah, from that line. Yeah, right. So it's by releasing the waist, the quad, that all goes right down.
Feel that in the legs.
Oh yeah. What you'll find is that the feeling ends up being more that you're rotating, and there won't be a tremendous amount of shifting. We're not yielding in the sense that we're running away. And anywhere you do run away, right? If you run away from the ground. So if you run away backwards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there you go. You fixed it, kind of. Now you're running away up. So what I mean by running away, of course, is a retreat of the body. So you haven't released, open, and sunk your mass, you haven't sunk your density, you haven't sunk my force. Everything is still contained, and you're retreating away from the force to avoid it getting into you. Ultimately, of course, the point of doing this is that it goes into the body. And then once it's in there all the way through to the ground and in the center and in the dantian, right, it's a small movement of redirection of all those forces to affect the other person. Not too bad, still a little lifting up in the sacrum and tailbone and Mingmen. That's better, that's now going down. So I'm gonna give you a little on pressure. Yeah, and now that's going right down into your structure. It's caught there, it's not gone through. You're able to support it, it's not a whole lot of pressure, but if you can let that go, now it's going through, right? Yeah. You can bring it back or you can take it wherever you want. You feel that? You choose. I just want to feel what you do. Yeah, that'll work. Exactly. That goes back to the previous video about structure.
When I let it through, but it's just...
It's harder.
Yeah.
It's much harder, for sure. The tissue has to stretch in a different way, the joints have arranged in a different way, the muscles have to work in a different way, and because it's not habit, it takes a lot of concentration to do that at first, right? And this is the eating bitter, this is the hard work. So as I come at you, if this goes away, something else comes back in where that absorbing, that taking the force down and around through the spiral, now creates a space in me for your force to come in. That's not bad. If everything moves back away from me at the same time, then there's no return. I follow that and then you end up in trouble. So think about where every contact point, not just this side's gonna go away and this side's gonna come forward, every single contact point does it. That's better. That's better. This is still going away more than I think it should. You're attacking here.
Yeah.
You're yielding here. Attack and yield from both. Attacking doesn't necessarily mean that it has to come right back at me. It just means that that same action you're doing is just as connected here as it is here. So instead of thinking of it as the limb, think of it as the way that force is moving through the limb, around all vector directions, possible directions. So I go like this, and this right here is taking that hand and moving it too. You see what I'm saying? Better. It's still compressing against your ribs.
Yeah.
So see if you can do it right. Like forget this for a moment. What if this was all you had? Right. That's it. Make that into the point of exchange. This is a part of silk ring that's very challenging, which is that ultimately every single part of the body is all expressing whatever the energy is doing, whatever your intention is. It's coming through the whole body, right? Every part of the body is a fist. This is tough, but it just shows you how easy it is when the mind zeroes in, say, on one point, the other point dims. It's like the light becomes bright here and the light dims there, but we want to have the light everywhere.
That actually makes sense in my practice as well, because when I'm doing my form, I'm like, okay, where is my hand in space? And then how is my body moving? And it's kind of like the energy just goes out into my hand, but I'm not necessarily always feeling every point along the way. So now I'm like, okay, now I have to do that in my form practice, like literally feel it through every single.
It starts in stillness postures, which is why, that's something we've been focusing on, because it's very difficult to do in movement. Then single movements, because the form is externally dynamic too, right? There's a lot of turning and changing and moving. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to zero in on some of these finer, more subtle aspects of things. Although I will say, sometimes movement can reveal things that hide from you in stillness and vice versa. So stillness and motion are important, but the motion should be relatively simple to start. And then when you're practicing the form, then you try to carry over what you've cultivated internally in those externally simpler practices into the form, which is externally more complex. Another way of thinking about it is you can track the movement through the body from, let's say, foot to hand and vice versa. Although I will say ultimately, we want to be soak reeling through the whole body at the same time, which means we want the whole body to be suffused with the mind, to be full of presence of energy and capacity and intent with yi. And then when we move, every single part moves. This is a prerequisite for Chen Tai Chi Fa Jin. Thank you.